Good morning, everyone. I am Cathy Brigham. I'm with CAEL and Learning Counts. I'm not Mark Campbell, and that's the person listed in the presentation. So in case you were confused why I didn't look like a Mark, it's because I'm not a Mark. My name's Cathy. I've been with CAEL for about 2 years. CAEL is the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning. I've been with CAEL for about 2 years now, and we'll be talking a lot today about one of the services that was launched by CAEL earlier this year called learningcounts.org, which is a PLAR service that we launched using Eportfolios. Prior to my time with CAEL, I was the dean of a college of adult education at a small private 4-year institution in the States, in Texas, which is where I live. And I was there for about 6 years, where I learned a lot of things about conducting PLAR studies with our students and doing assessments with our students. And what I tell folks when I'm doing these kinds of presentations is I learned a lot about how to do them badly. Which is not a statement on that college or the university itself. It's just there's a lot of institutions in the United States that do PLAR and that they do it not necessarily with a lot of thought about how it impacts students. And that can be a valuable experiential learning process for the administrator, him or herself, as it was for me. And I learned how we were basically handicapping our students a little bit by having such a cumbersome, clunky process for our PLAR that it basically meant that we weren't really offering a system for them. So I took that interest in the experience and then came to CAEL, where I've been able to help colleges and universities across the United States work on improving their PLAR services for students. So I want to tell you a little bit about CAEL just briefly for those who are not familiar with the organization, but spend most of the day, most of the session talking about learningcounts.org, which is the new online ePortfolio PLAR system. Do y'all say, in Canada, do you say PLAR or PLAR? Both, okay. I might switch to PLAR because it's less syllables. So CAEL is a national nonprofit organization headquartered in Chicago. We've been around for about 40 years. It's 37 years. It started as a research study that was an offshoot of another nonprofit agency within the States. And it focused on best practices for adult learners. The research study 40 years ago was so well received and so many people clamored for more information based on that study that it led to the formation of its own agency. So CAEL was founded in that research study nearly 40 years ago. And since then, we've done a lot of best practice studies, white papers, research practices on best ways to serve adult learners. We work directly with colleges and universities across the United States. We work with government agencies and helping displaced workers transition into emerging industries. And we also work with public sector corporations, helping with training of their adult workers. So we work with adult learners in every environment. Those who are matriculated at campuses, those who work at who are currently in the workforce, and those who are in transition within the workforce. We're based in Chicago. We have offices in Philadelphia and Denver, and then I work at our Texas outpost. I've been living in Texas for about 15 years, and I don't know if you want to call it a fort because it's Texas or whatever you call it, but I office in Texas. One of the research studies, almost all of the work that we do as a nonprofit is available for free to the public. So if you don't know our website, you might want to become familiar with it because there are several dozen substantive research studies on the efficacy of PLAR within the United States. But we do have 2 Canadian universities that are very active members and participants within CAEL, and they often participate in our research studies. So there is some inclusion of Canadian studies as well in our work. So if you're not familiar with our website, which is www.cael.org, O-R-G, www.cael.org, you may want to turn there just for some research that you may want to reference. And one of the more popular studies was the one that you see on the screen right now, Fueling the Race to Post-Secondary Success. It was released in February of 2010, and it looks at links between PLAR usage and other academic outcomes. We looked at over 62,000 student records from across the United States from 48 institutions, 46 institutions within the United States, and 2 within Canada. And looking at the over 60,000 individual student records, we were looking for correlations between PLAR usage and other academic outcomes, most notably completion rates, retention rates, which are the biggest areas of concern within the United States today. How can we improve our completion rates? Because we have an exceptionally high dropout rate and also an exceptionally long graduation rate. Most students do not graduate within 7 years, even for a 2-year degree. So the first piece of data I'd like to share with you is a slide based on graduation rates or completion rates. And what you see here is the bar on the left shows the completion rates of students who did not use PLA or PLAR credits. And the bar on the right shows students who had completed PLA or PLAR credits. Your red and light blue are degree completers, students who completed a degree within 7 years. Light blue is an associate's degree, or for us, a 2-year degree. And the red is a 4-year degree or a baccalaureate degree in the United States. So the red and the light blue are degree completers, and the dark blue are students who did not complete a degree of any sort within 7 years. So what you see on the left is that of the students who had not completed PLA credits, only 21% of them graduated within 7 years. On the right, of the students who had completed PLA credits, over 50% of them had graduated within 7 years. That's over 2.5 times as likely to graduate within 7 years. I'm not a statistician, but our director of research assures me that when we strip away for all other variables, types of institution, which is a very big differential in the United States, so was it public or private, was it 2-year or 4-year, was it not-for-profit or was it for-profit, when we stripped away ethnicity, when we stripped away income level of the student, and when we stripped away gender, the only other thing that differentiated these two categories of students was whether or not they had used PLAR credits. So the substantive difference between these two categories of students was whether or not they'd used PLA. And as a result, we found a correlation between a much improved completion rate, 2.5 times more likely to graduate. Okay, big deal, Cathy. So there's 44% who still did not complete in 7 years. What happened to them? And what happened to them is they were more likely to persist at the same institution within 7 years. So this slide has a lot of data, and if you're in the back of the room, you're not going to be able to see it very well. So let me walk you through a little bit of the colors. The light blue show the students who did not earn PLA credit, and the red shows students who had completed PLA credit. And the left side of the chart is the least amount of credit accumulated, and the right side of the chart is the most amounts of credit accumulated. So what you see is on the far left, of the students who had not completed, still well over a quarter of those students, after 7 years, if they had not used PLA credit, they'd still only racked up less than 10% of the credits they needed to complete a degree of any sort. Versus at the far right, the students who had not graduated, the ones who had used PLA, over half of those remaining had over 80% of their degree completed. They just needed probably another year or two to rack up the rest of the credits that they were working on. So they were far more likely to graduate within 7 years. And then beyond that, if they hadn't graduated within 7, they were far more likely to graduate within 8 or 9. Based on that research study, we had a lot of interest from across the country on how this could help individual colleges and universities improve their own retention and graduation rates. And through generous funding from some philanthropic sources within the United States, we were challenged to basically provide some more direct services to campuses across the country to see what we could do to help the national completion agenda within the United States. And we launched what's known as learningcounts.org. And that is the URL of the service itself, learningcounts.org. And it is an online PLA service that any learner can approach, if they're matriculated or not, to use to have their prior learning evaluated for college level credit. We use an Eportfolio system, and it is run by CAEL itself. So it's a campus neutral service that's run by an organization that has 40 years of experience with doing best practices in PLA. One of the reasons that I think a lot of campuses across the country are finding this so appealing is that it is campus neutral and it is being run by a nonprofit agency that has a long tradition in PLA and PLA research. So there's a lot of confidence in our methodology and a lot of confidence in the fact that we are treating students with high-touch services and also with a lot of quality and concern. We also have the ability to generate this really tremendous faculty roster that's more expansive than any individual campus could have. When we launched Learning Counts, we immediately put out a call for applications to our faculty roster, and we have over 700 applications to the faculty roster right now. And we have hired over 70 of those individuals. They get vetted by us, invited to the roster by us, and then they need to participate in CAEL overseen online training, and they have to complete that before they're ever allowed to work with a student. And as a personal note, because one of my areas of responsibility within Learning Counts is the faculty roster, if you or any of your colleagues would like to be a part of that roster, please let me know. And we have precedent for hiring expats and also Canadians on our roster, so that's not a problem. It's fun to work with the faculty roster because every time you think that you anticipate what the high demand discipline areas are going to be, and you staff against those anticipated needs, and then you have these weird curveballs thrown at you. And I'm going to show you some slides of where our portfolio discipline areas have been in so far. But then you have the one-offs that come across. So we had someone come in through the system who wanted a portfolio in funeral science. Did not see that coming, had not had that staffed. So we were able to go find someone to cover funeral science. And immediately after that's done, you breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, we're good to go. And then you have someone, in 1 week, we had students express interest in having their mastery of Urdu, the Pakistani Himalayan language, of Urdu measured, and also midwifery. Neither of which I currently have staffed, but we are currently recruiting in. So if you know any midwives with appropriate academic credentials or anyone who's fluent in Urdu, I will be interested in learning about them. But you can see with the expansive faculty roster we have that can be a tremendous resource for schools that would like to offer PLA resources to their students, but may not have the faculty credentials to review a portfolio in a given area. We work with institutions that may just want to send one portfolio every now and then because of that situation. They have a portfolio in Urdu, they don't have anyone who speaks it. They may send just that one portfolio. We also have institutions that are sending all their portfolios through us. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go. So Learning Counts, the mission of Learning Counts is to help students earn college credit for what they already know. And we do that through a 3-step process. I usually tell folks that Learning Counts will offer 3 services to them. One, it's a one-stop shop for information about all PLA formats available to them through regionally accredited U.S. institutions. We also offer free academic advising, no commitment. And then if they'd like to move forward with portfolio-based learning, we offer an opportunity for them to take an online credit-bearing course in how to build a portfolio, and then also submit those portfolios for evaluation. So the one-stop shop. Learning Counts was built in partnership with CAEL, the agency that I'm with, and also with College Board, which is an American agency that offers standardized exams like the CLEP exam. It offers about 33, I believe it is this year, 33 standardized exams that are very common. The most popular one in the United States is Spanish. By leaps and bounds, it's the most popularly requested CLEP exam, largely because of the immigration patterns within the United States. It was also developed in partnership with ACE, the American Council on Education, which largely evaluates military and corporate training across America. So active duty service personnel and veterans will have had formalized training through their service, and the ACE, American Council on Education, will evaluate that training for college level matches. So the most common one is if you successfully complete your basic training and you are honorably discharged from the service, you will probably come across with an exemption for your physical education requirement if you even have one. So that's the most common one. But there's also much more specific examples for mechanical engineering, auto repair, helicopter repair, et cetera. So things that might be related to pretty intense military training. That said, there is a tremendous amount of learning that happens in the military environment that is not captured by ACE that might be a good match for portfolio. So the one-stop shop aspect of Learning Counts means that students can get information about all of these formats of PLA that are available to them within the United States. They can find out about standardized exams. For us in the United States, standardized exams are cheap and fast, and I don't mean that in a negative way. A CLEP exam, for example, in Spanish would cost a student $77, take 90 minutes of their time, and could yield 12 credits for $77, which is a tremendous savings even at our most subsidized institutions in the United States. We also have information. There's a tremendous amount of military personnel who leave their service and don't know that these transcripts are available to them for free. So we've counseled many service personnel about the availability of these transcripts that are basically sitting in a repository waiting for them to claim them. And we also advise them about individualized portfolio for any learning that falls outside of these standardized areas. So the advising session that we offer to students is a free phone consultation of up to 30 minutes or so. We've done it largely by phone. We've had one set up by email for a student who is actually actively deployed in Afghanistan, and because of the time change, she could not meet with an advisor by phone and because of other logistics. So we did handle that one advising session by email, but most of it's by phone, and it's live, and it's synchronous at the same time. In all cases, the student is presenting and talking about their life experiences and the learning from these experiences and receiving information about what's the best match for having that learning assessed. We will counsel students to go to the standardized exam, if that's appropriate to them. We will counsel students to go secure their transcript from ACE, if that's right for them. We will counsel students to move forward with an individualized portfolio, if that's right for them. And we will counsel students to go back to more conventional learning environments, if that's right for them. Some students come to us and cannot get past the fact that this is not, give me your resume and I will give you credit. So if we realize that there's a barrier there and the student cannot get past that, we may counsel them to go to a more conventional learning environment until they're ready to take some ownership of that process. If they are counseled to move forward with an individualized portfolio, this is where learning counts becomes very interesting, probably especially for people in this room. We offer an online portfolio development class. We call it CAEL 100. It's a lower level course in the United States. It is credit bearing. So if the student completes the course successfully, it will result in 3 undergraduate credits in academic planning. It's 6 weeks long. I call it asynchronous, but not. So students can complete the work at their own pace with one caveat. It's a 6-week long course and there's 6 units to the course. So each unit needs to be completed within 1 calendar week. But within that week, the student can work at his or her own pace. It is facilitated by a human, so there is actually an instructor teaching the course, and the instructor has been trained by CAEL and comes to CAEL with, all of our instructors for this course have extensive experience teaching portfolio development classes elsewhere as well. Courses start every few weeks. They make with 10 students, that's when we will run a course, and they cap at 25 students. So students are also ensured of a very high-touch experience here. It's a writing-intensive course, and I've been very proud. I oversee all faculty aspects with Learning Counts, so I'm also oversee the instruction of this course. I don't teach it myself, but I oversee it. And I've been very proud of the high-quality level of feedback that we've been giving to students on their writing, even if they're not petitioning for a writing course, because communication is one of the skills that you will need to be successful in the portfolio environment. The first half of the course teaches students a little bit about thinking about learning, about andragogy, about their learning styles, and thinking about, a lot of students come into the process thinking they know what they want to petition for, and we try to help them think beyond that so that they can be sure to capture as much learning as possible. The second half of the course really focuses on developing components of a portfolio that will go into the ePortfolio for Learning Counts. If they then choose to submit a portfolio, they can do it through Learning Counts. Again, it's an ePortfolio system. It's currently narrative-based, so there's a lot of emphasis on the written word. There's a personal narrative, or an essay that's submitted, as well as written documents. But we are more and more incorporating other forms of documentation. We had a student just this week, or last week, successfully petition for credits in radio, television, film. Because he had about 30 years experience as a radio DJ. And so he submitted air check tapes or audio tapes or MPEG or WAV files of his on-air time. And so we were able to accommodate that. We can also accommodate video. The one thing that we can't yet accommodate are personal interviews between the student and the assessor, but we are working towards that. So right now it is generally document-based ePortfolios. Each portfolio can include up to 6 undergraduate credits within one portfolio, assuming they're all in the same discipline. And we do that because we route each portfolio to one assessor. And since the student pays $250 per portfolio, and since we pay the assessor $150 of that fee, Were we to have to route it to multiple people, it's immediately a loss leader for us, or lost money. So we are trying to maximize the number of credits students can get through this, maximize the amount of money we can pay our assessors, and still have this not cause us to go bankrupt. So that's the balance that we have there. Now, I think that one of the more amazing parts about our service is that we guarantee to students that we will have a determination on their portfolio back to them within 2 weeks. When I mentioned that I used to work on a campus, our guarantee to students was that we'd have an evaluation back to them within 8 months. And by the way, students were already coming into our program with an average of about 60 hours, which is half of the degree completed. So they're basically juniors in a third year in a 4-year program. By the time they learned about portfolio and submitted one, they were basically seniors, and it was useless because we wouldn't get an evaluation back to them until after they already had to apply for graduation. So a 2-week turnaround can be very helpful for students and for institutions. So we launched in January. We immediately asked our member network, because CAEL is a member-based organization, and then also got some nice press about the launch of Learning Counts. And we currently have over 120 campuses across the country signed on to be partner institutions for this initiative. Last week, we also signed the Achieving the Dream Schools, which is a network of 2-year institutions across the country that focus on serving the underserved student population, so students of color and students with financial need. And they just joined Learning Counts last week, which adds another 120 campuses to our partner list. Beyond that, all of our transcripting is done by ACE, the folks who transcribe military credit as one example, and they have a network of over 1,000 schools that accept their transcripts. So we are not an accredited agency. We're not awarding credit ourselves because of the way that it's structured in the United States. We are issuing credit recommendations on this ACE transcript, and schools will then, if they partner with us, are guaranteeing that they will accept the credit recommendations from us. So I would say 95% of our students have come from our partner institutions so far. And the remaining 5% are students who have found us because we are on the web. And they found us and they moved through the system. We've not done a lot of advertising about this because we really are just focusing on testing our systems, getting feedback from our partner institutions, getting feedback from the students, and making improvements. So we're sort of still in a beta launch. But we do have a few students who found us on the web and moved through the system. Most of our students, however, are coming from partner institutions and planning to graduate from there. The few that did not come from partner institutions, they were not matriculated anywhere, they chose their home institution based on our partner list. So we can see some opportunity for possible recruiting, a recruiting asset for schools that would like to join our partner list. The institutions themselves really benefit from partnering with Learning Counts because it offers them a turnkey opportunity to offer PLA to their students without much financial or staff encumbrance at all. So you see that the links between retention and graduation rates for institutions, and we have heard for years that institutions want to expand their PLA services, but they just don't have the resources to do it. They don't have the money to do it. They don't have the staff to do it. They may not even have another fire-safe filing cabinet to file paper portfolios in, and that those cost several $100s. They just don't have the resources at all. So this offers them a really affordable, almost free service for them to offer turnkey PLA for their students and therefore help recruitment, help retention, and help graduation rates on their campus. We also work with organizations, corporations, businesses that would like to have their on-site training evaluated for college-level learning. There are a couple ways to do that in the United States. One is a very formal process through ACE. They will evaluate, like McDonald's, for example. The restaurant chain has its corporate level training, so it's managerial level training, evaluated by ACE for college level credit. Also Microsoft training, very, very, very common credit that students might bring in, and that's all through American Council on Education, or ACE. But that's an expensive and cumbersome process for most small and mid-sized organizations, and it might not be a resource for them. So this is one way that they can still provide training to their employees and then help them translate that training into college-level equivalency. It's kind of a clunky process because the student still needs to assemble a portfolio. Hopefully we'll streamline that eventually, but at least it's a resource that wasn't available before. We also have several U.S. military organizations that are partnering with Learning Counts. There's an agency called Military to Medicine, for example, that translates folks who've been working in the field in the military, in medicine, to come back to hospital or in civilian life. So helping them move those skills over to civilian atmospheres. And they partner with us, as does Veterans Upward Bound, which is a federal grant program for helping graduate those who have been serving in the military. And how does PLA help students? Well, I think the free advising is a tremendous asset for students. I think obviously the push to help them retain and graduate, it helps students, but they don't necessarily see that they need help with that. Most students go into this process thinking that they're going to complete. So they don't necessarily know that they might need help with that. But the advising is certainly very useful for students. It's also a very affordable process for students. We tried to price it halfway between our 2-year institutions, which are heavily subsidized, and our 4-year institutions, which may not be quite so subsidized by the government. So we tried to place it somewhere where everybody could be a little bit happy about that. They also have a broader access to their learning, for their learning to be evaluated through our national roster than they might have at their local institution. For example, we had a student at a 4-year university pursuing a liberal arts degree who had been working as a fire chief for his local firehouse for decades. And in America, you can't study fire science at a 4-year level. You have to go to a 2-year trade institution to do that. So he was stuck at his campus. He couldn't get portfolio credit for that because there was no assessor for it. Well, what he was able to do through Learning Counts was go find a course catalog for that fire science background, have it evaluated through Learning Counts, and have it come across to his 4-year degree as elective credit. So it worked beautifully for him, and it worked beautifully for the institution because they were happy to be able to help him in this way. We also have, because we are a nonprofit agency, we also have access to philanthropic funds that maybe not every campus would have access to. So we also have funding from the Walmart Foundation for full ride stipends to students. So they've given us a pretty generous contribution to Learning Counts, and we are able to then award student full rides through the course, which is $500, and through the assessment of one portfolio, which is an additional $250. So it's a $750 scholarship for, I don't have an exact number, but we have 100-ish or so left that have not yet been used. For corporations, we've been partnering with increasing number of national and international corporations for having their corporate level training evaluated. And I'd like to think that corporations are after developing happy, healthy people, so that these happy, healthy people are more likely to stay with that institution, stay with that organization, and also are more equipped to move up within that organization and help with attrition when there's people who retire, for example. So we have partnered with Starbucks. They piloted with Learning Counts throughout 2011, and in January, I keep hitting this, sorry. And in January of 2012, they'll be rolling it out nationwide. So the pilot in 2011 was with Starbucks stores in 3 states in the United States. And starting in January, they're going to roll out what they call Starbucks University, which will be a full online program with basically a resource repository about going back to school and about the tuition benefits through Starbucks, but there's also a heavy component for Learning Counts on there, and this will be rolled out nationwide. I do not believe international yet. I think this will be phase 2 of their process. We also are partnering with McDonald's for the corporate level training, and Brunswick, which is the company that makes, for example, bowling balls as well as other things, but I know them for bowling balls because I like bowling. And then Verizon Wireless, the cell phone company, also is working with us, and we are in conversations with Boeing and with Disney. One of the events in the United States that also is very interested in Learning Counts is this Talent Dividend Prize. It's a philanthropically funded prize that benefits individual cities across the country. So it's prize money of $1 million that will be awarded to one city in the United States, the one city that can move the needle on college completion the most between the time they applied and the time that the contest ends. So it's funded by the 3 organizations at the below part of the screen: Kresge Foundation, Lumina Foundation for Education, and CEOs for Cities. And the purpose is not really to give the cash money to the city because they're going to be investing a lot more resources and they're actually going to win. It's more to get people at a corporate level, at a leadership level, talking about this issue of college completion and job readiness and how these major corporations can more appropriately prepare their workforce for the workforce needs that they see on the horizon. There's a tremendous gap in America between where our workforce needs are going to be in 15 years and where we are set to be if we keep on our current pace. So the Talent Dividend Prize is one way to encourage major cities to think about this college completion and to sort of put agendas in place. And we've been partnering with several cities competing for the Talent Dividend Prize to use learningcounts.org as part of their college completion agenda. So we launched Learning Counts in January, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've done so far. I'd mentioned to you that we have not spent a lot of money on marketing. We do have a website up. We have been receiving a lot of press. The Chronicle of Higher Education has covered us, Inside Higher Ed has covered us, the New York Times has covered us. And so most of our web hits have come from these press releases as well as from just word of mouth. So we've had over 40,000 hits on our site since January, and average time on site is about 3 minutes. We've linked out to our partner organizations at the standardized exam, the CLEP exam and the ACE. And the biggest day on our website has been the day that the New York Times published I like to say a front page article, but really it was the front page of the education section, but nobody needs to know that part. But did a front page article in the education section about learningcounts.org, and that was the biggest day on our website to date. Our student pipeline, we've had about 750 students create accounts through Learning Counts, and that means that they sign up and maybe request an advising session. So you do have to, the only commitment for our advising session is that we ask that you submit your email, because that's how we're going to set up the advising session. So we had 750 students since January set up an account through Learning Counts, and about 350 of them have requested advising sessions. So we do have some kind of a conversion gap there. Not sure if it's people 3 in the morning who are surfing the web and, yeah, I'll fill out this form, no problem, and don't intend to actually ever do anything, or what that gap is. So we're looking at that. But about 350 have requested advising sessions, and only 200 of them have gone through the advising session to date. Now, there's a fair number of that gap there that are in the process of setting up an advising session, so we can't say that the advising session has been completed yet. And there's also a fair number of them who may have filled out the advising request at 3 in the morning. So we are trying to find out where the gap is there. Of our student pipeline, we've had 130 students enrolled in our online portfolio development class since March. So we launched in January, but we were going through accreditation for January, February, March. So we didn't really have a course run until mid-March. So I kind of consider it from the academic side of things that we didn't launch until mid-March of 2011. Since then, we've had 130 students enroll in our course, and we've had a pass and extension and did not pass or fail rate as demonstrated on this slide. So we have 20 students did not complete the course successfully. 65 students have passed the course, and 33 are currently enrolled. Then you have a middle category of 12 who are currently in a status of extension. Those students who did not successfully complete the course, what we are finding is that it is for lack of trying. They actually sign up for the course and don't participate, don't log on, don't submit work, whatever that category. So it's not that they're missing the concepts of the course, it's that they're not participating. So as a result of this, we have rolled out some advising sessions for students so that we have an advising service now in place where we can do more outreach to students who are not participating and see if we can help them with that, or at least get them withdrawn so they can get their money back, because right now they're not even taking the step to withdraw. You have to pass the course before you can submit a portfolio through Learning Counts. So of the students who have completed the course, 27 portfolios have been submitted since then. 118 portfolio requests have been submitted. So students have asked for 118 college credits through portfolios, and 89 have been recommended. I'm going to show you a different slide of this so that you can see the breakdown of that gap, how many of that means portfolios that did not pass, and how many of those are portfolios still in process. But between the course itself and the portfolio recommendations, Learning Counts, since March 15th, has issued 284 credit recommendations. Said another way, that means that we have issued credit recommendations that equal 7 years of full-time enrollment for an American student. If that was one student, that would be full-time enrollment for 7 years. So we've accelerated the college completion rates of students by that much. This is data, composite data from all of our students, and it's as of October. So it's a little bit out of date at this point, but not by much. Things are slowing down right now because of the holidays, so it's not horribly out of date right now. We have been issuing through Portfolio 5.7 credits on average per student. So they request more than that, but they are being issued recommendations for 5.7 credits per student. And our evaluations of portfolios have been turned around in 11 days. We guarantee it within 14 days, but we've been turning them around on an average of 11 days. And I already said the second. Our faculty assessors participate in an online workshop, and it's hosted through the LMS Moodle, if y'all are familiar with Moodle. Our course is hosted through Moodle, and our assessor training is also hosted through Moodle. This is just a screenshot of the workshop that assessors participate in, and it's very interactive. Of course, it's just as interactive as you make it, but there is a lot of opportunity, and a lot of people take advantage of this opportunity to interact with your cohort of assessors. We've been enrolling about clusters of 20 to 25 faculty assessors each month to go through the training together so that you can really learn from your peers who are going through this process. And we've had all over the gamut people who are very familiar with portfolios go through this, and some who are quite new and never even heard of PLA before go through this process. So here's a slide on portfolio credits to date. The big blue are portfolio credits that have been recommended, so successful portfolios that have been submitted and resulted in credit recommendations. They reflect 3/4 of the pie. We have 15% of our portfolio credits that have been submitted that are still under review right now, and then we have 10% that did not pass. And this line is never my most popular line, but I'm actually quite proud of our fail rate of 10%. I'd be very alarmed if our pass rate was higher than 90% or 75%. I think that it does speak to our ability of our quality assurance within Learning Counts, that we are not just passing every portfolio that comes our way. Of the 10% that were denied, several of those students one student went on to appeal successfully, and 2 other students went on through a tutoring process to redo their portfolios, and both of those students have their portfolios in resubmission right now, so they're under review right now. The rest did not move forward. Our portfolio disciplines to date are in areas that you might anticipate. We anticipated that the biggest areas would be business, computer science, and allied health, and that's exactly how it broke out for us so far. So business is the big blue. That's the largest section of portfolio credits that have come across. It represents 30% of the portfolios that have come in. Computer information systems is the second highest at 14%, and these are not just managing a desktop or knowing how to use computers. This is like building out a system, building a network, things I don't even understand what they're asking for. So this is pretty higher level computer skills. And then the next highest, if you roll finance into business, if not, finance and allied health come in third. Then we have had other portfolios, for those who are in the back of the room, in some trade fields. So we've had construction and HVAC, or heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Also public administration, English, and communications. And I'm going to close with a student testimonial if I can. Oh, I can't. We don't have speakers, so you won't be able to hear it. But we have a student testimonial on our website. We have several, actually. And I would ask that you, if you're interested, to go hear some of the student experiences with Learning Counts. This particular student had requested 12 credits in allied health. She and her husband had her own company that closed during the economic downturn in the United States. They were forced to close their business, and so she went back to school. She had many hours of her degree completed but needed to finish, and her home institution was not equipped to provide her PLA credits for her allied health background. She had been a nurse. And so they were able, because as a partner institution with Learning Counts, they were able to send her to Learning Counts to have her portfolios in allied health evaluated. They were successfully evaluated, and she got the 12 hours that helped her finish her degree, and she'll be graduating next month. And if you'd like to find out more about us, our URL is the name of the service, the learningcounts.org, and you can also follow us on social media and see some of our student testimonials on YouTube as well. I'm happy to take any questions from the room. Question was, how do students find the learning that they're going to write against? And we are based on a course match system, so students do go out and find a course that best suits their learning. And the number one recommendation for students as they go through this process, they get help in this process, by the way, during the course. So the instructor helps them through this process. The number one choice for students is to choose a course from their home institution's catalog, because that's just easier for everybody. It's easier for it to be transcribed onto their degree plan when it comes back across. If that institution does not offer the course that matches their learning, think of the fire science guy, then the second choice would be to go to our catalog that we are building. With every successful every portfolio request that comes across, we are building a course catalog filled with outcomes, objectives, learning, course description, and recommended credits to go with it. And they can choose from that. And that's also very easy for the receiving institution. The third choice, and this is available and has been working fine, is students can go to any regionally accredited institution, so that's the top tier of accreditation within the United States. They can go to any regionally accredited institution in the country and find a course that best matches their learning. So if they were in Urdu and they knew they weren't so hot on the grammar part of it because they were more conversationalist, they could go to the school that offers conversational Urdu versus syntactical or grammar or the history of Urdu in literature, whatever the choice might be. They could find the learning area that matches, the course that matches their learning. Okay, the question was, how are we partnering with regulatory agencies that oversee workplace credentials, whether or not you are licensed to work in a certain field?
For registration purposes, for licensing purposes.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest issue for that in the United States is nursing. That's the biggest field for that. And then second would be licensure with, well, I don't know if I'm qualified to say what the second leading would be, but I know that there's also a high demand for example, completed Microsoft certification because of the implications with that. But by leaps and bounds, nursing is the most important field for that. And our accrediting agencies within the United States, the certification agencies, most of them do have statements about experiential learning, how much that they will accept for a certification within that field and whether or not they will accept it. And with nursing, they do accept experiential learning as part of the credential process, and they do not cap it. They do leave it up to the institution that's awarding the credit, but it's also a little bit vague. So our role, as we see it within CAEL, is helping to educate those agencies to recognize clarifying their language, helping them recognize how clarifying their language can improve their process, their certification process overall. So we do a lot of policy work, and that could be at the federal and state level, but it can also be at the regulatory level as well. So just helping organizations understand that their vaguely written tuition policy or their vaguely written policy about educational standards isn't necessarily helping in that it's so vague. So if we could help them understand that a little bit more precision in that language could be helpful for their members, that's a role that we take on. So we've been working with Allied Health in that area and with our nursing fields, our nursing agencies, and one of the partnerships that have formalized is with an organization called AHIMA, the American Health Information Management Association. So these are the folks who get certified in entering medical records and managing medical records through technology, and they have signed on as partners with Learning Counts. And then the actual people who are drawing blood or doing actual services on patients, that will be next. That's a little bit more complicated because of regulations. The question is, how does it work? The question is, what happens with the credit recommendation for students who are not enrolled anywhere or who are enrolling at an institution that's not part of our network? And another great question, and something that we're learning as we go. But I do have a couple concrete ways to answer that. Again, most of our students, 95% of our students, are coming from partner institutions. So these are institutions that have already agreed to accept our credit recommendations. So there's not an issue there. For the 5% who have come through who are non-matriculated, they wound up choosing schools from our partner network. So again, for those individuals, it was not an issue. But that category, that 5%, is going to be growing, I would think. We would think. And so what we anticipate doing is we've sort of helped by partnering with ACE because their network of institutions that agree to accept their credits is so huge compared to ours. So they have over 1,200 schools in their network, and they are issuing the transcript recommendations. So that really helps mediate the concern for many students who are not from the partner network. Second, before the student enrolls anywhere in any kind of Learning Counts service, our advising session walks them through that. So one of the first questions we ask, what's your name? tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you enrolled somewhere? And if they say no, then we find out what their life plans are with regard to education. Are you planning to enroll somewhere? Have you talked to an advisor there? Let me get you some information about contacting the advisors there, the admissions office there, so that you can find out if this is going to work at their institution. So we will never enroll someone who hasn't had that conversation, unless their only goal is to get experience with ePortfolio. Their only goal is to get some aspirational affirmation that they can do this, because while I've shown you slides about how PLA and PLAR can help with graduation and retention rates, the one slide I can't tell you, but I can only speak to from my experience, is how motivational this can be for students who are coming back to a campus and have been away for some time, so your adult students who are coming back, how this can be a very positive experience for them aspirationally and can help them believe that they'll be successful. But I don't have slides on that because we don't really have data on how people feel about PLA, although we'd like to. So our network is big, our partner network is bigger, and then we spend a lot of time in our advising session helping students understand what the implications could be for the credit recommendation if they're from outside the network. Other questions? Well, I thank you for your time. Again, I'd ask if you are interested in being part of our faculty roster to let me know. Give me your card, or I can tell you how to apply for the positions. If you or any of your institutions would be interested in finding more about the partner process, please let me know. And I'll be around to answer any questions that you may have specific to your campus. Thank you.